Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello, I'm Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 229 of the Cognitive Podcast. And I'm going to try a new positioning of my recorder because last week I put it on the arm of my chair, and for some reason my voice was swinging high and low during the playback. I didn't realize it till I'd already released it and then was listening to the playback in the car, and it was very weird. So I'm just going to try placing the recorder somewhere else and seeing what we get. Meanwhile, your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. It's another photo-heavy episode, and I couldn't resist updating you on what Audrey 4, our wisteria, is up to, because now she is growing and blossoming like crazy. And I'm really pleased because for years I've been trying to train her vines around the front uprights of the porch. My husband repainted them recently, and now is the time. And sure enough, there they are blossoming around the uprights. Spring is just springing, as you'll hear when we get to the Spearmint Rescue Project. So, here we are, episode 229. Even springier is what I would say. In the Warm Thanks department, Sal Pal asks a very reasonable question. Somebody asked me this on Reddit in a much more harsh way, and I like the way Sal Pal is saying it. I think it's a very intelligent way to think of it. She said, is there a reason you are not using thumb drives to save your books? Is it the need for a computer of some type to access? I am thinking about my Ravelry patterns. I have some huge thumb drives that I could use. I think that's a superb idea. I think it's especially good to back up your Ravelry patterns that way, because if you're on a computer of some type into which you can plug the thumb drive, which is a pretty important consideration. My Apple tablets would be a little problematic that way. However, if you're on a PC, for example, or a desktop, thumb drives are a great alternative. And I think with Ravelry patterns, being able to carry them around in such a teeny tiny compact way is great. I'm on a whole different wavelength here. I think, in other words, Sal Pal, it's a great idea. The wavelength I'm on is I want this mini library. I want a collection of, so to speak, books that when I want to go on vacation, I can just grab one and take it with me and know that I've got this enormous collection of readable things. And if I take one of the bigger Kindle readers I have, the Paperwhites. I have 2 Paperwhites. And what I like about those is they have twice the storage of the little inexpensive Kindle Basic. And if I take one of those, that's got all my Audible stuff on it. So I can take one little Kindle, and if I want to listen to stuff, one of the Paperwhites, I can take that anywhere and be loaded up with books and things to listen to. I think this is becoming more important now because there are reports that people's phones are getting read when they enter the United States. I don't know if this is happening domestically in airports as well as part of security, but it seems to be happening when people enter the country, that they take your iPhone and they want to read it and see what you're doing. If that's true, I keep hearing it. I'm sort of stunned. But if that's true, all the more reason for this. That if that's true, I will be taking a blank phone. I will brick my phone, take the card out of it when I travel and put it somewhere in my carry-on luggage and just hand them a brick and say, sure. And if you can make that run and you can read it, sure, but I'm going to brick it. I'm going to back everything up and take it off the phone so the phone is empty when I go through those security checkpoints. When I land wherever I'm landing, I'm sure I can always connect to the cloud and get everything back if I want to do that. I may simply say on a trip, I just need a burner phone and I don't want to have all that stuff with me. After all, vacation is vacation. If that's true, then the Kindles become even more important. The Kindles are like, sure, plug it on in. It's all backed up in other ways. I have it's all on the Amazon Kindle app. It's all on my hard drive, on my desktop computer. I mean, I have this stuff backed up quite a lot. But the actual Kindles were an attempt to get rid of most of my printed books that I have in my home right now, to really reduce that. And again, the comment I get the most often on the Reddit group is, but what if your Kindles die? What if my house burns down? I mean, if you're going to lose your books, you're going to lose your books. One thing about the Kindles, as long as Amazon stays alive as a site, I should have a backup of most of them, probably not all of them. There have been clawbacks, and I don't want to get into that because some of it was reasonable, some of it I would question. But the point is, I just want to put stuff on a reader, turn it off, completely take it off the net. So all I do is charge it with a charging cable, and I can open it and have 200 or 300 books to read while I'm lying on a beach somewhere. And if the phone thing is going to be a problem in our current politics, then yes, I want to have a burner phone. I don't want to read, in other words, on my phone. I don't want anything on the phone. I really just want to carry it with me so that when I land wherever I land, I can reestablish it and use it to contact people. And that's going to mean that maybe my books should travel somewhere else, very discreet. I also just want to thank, as always, my listeners to this podcast, my people on the ground in the Santa Clarita Valley, and my people on Reddit, because you guys are making my life percolate in between the crazy road trips and all the patients. Cognitive Fiber Retreat, this is your weekly reminder that CFR 11 is scheduled for October 11th, 2025, so mark your calendars. Let us roll on to what is on my hooks and needles. Well, very, very productive sort of week. I finished sock number 1 in my train travels. Finally, finished the heel and the toe. This is in the colorway Blue Iris, and I cannot remember where I got this colorway. It is not Rio's. Okay. And this is the Blueberry Waffle Sock pattern, which is a simple 4-row repeat. 2 rows of stockinette and then 2 rows of knit 2, purl 2. And I only did that on the leg. I decided to knit the foot solidly because I was not expecting to be on the train at that time. If I'd known I was going to have real knitting time on a train, I probably would have done it all the way down in the Blueberry Waffle, at least on the top of the foot. But there you are. You can see finished sock number 1, looking very handsome. If you like that yarn, you're going to have to trace it into my notes on Ravelry. I cannot offhand remember who dyed that spectacularly beautiful yarn. In progress, the stash toss remains at 30 in and 18 out. Of course, finishing the socks will add 1 more to the outside. And I worked a little bit on the novice slipover in the Malabrigo Rios Water Green. I'm still on the first skein of that. That's going to take out 4 more skeins, which is nice news. Meanwhile, I did start the second sock of these Blueberry Waffle socks. In case you're wondering, on the train today, in fact, I got up to the stockinette. I always do top-down socks. First 2 inches are 1 by 1 rib. So I got through that on the train today, finally. And then just got down to the part where I'm doing the waffle pattern. So you can see that, which is making me very, very happy. I keep thinking I'm doing stockinette on that leg and have to keep going back and saying, no. This is actually the waffle pattern. I had a brain freeze on the train and had to actually look it up. Meanwhile, the Virgo sweater is going very happily. You can see a picture of me wearing it. I have not put the sleeves on it yet, but the body is completed. And, you know, it's a slightly unflattering line around the tummy. I guess because I'm slouching a bit or something, it makes my tummy look a little bulgy there. But even so, as you can see, it's very pretty. I always wanted a sweater with that kind of speckled pattern yarn. So this is my attempt to scratch that itch. It looks a little weird because it looks like it's got this strange pooling of dark green across my midsection. No, those are actually my old lady reading glasses. They're green and they're hanging at an angle on a chain that I made myself, I might add. But they're hanging at an angle across my body. It looks like it's part of the sweater. Oi! But there I am, even matching my phone case. To my shock, this matched the skirt, the me-made skirt that I was wearing that day as I tried it on. So that's coming along swimmingly. What's really nice is now I can do the arms. And arms don't usually take me that long. Sleeves, as you will. Hopefully, those are not famous last words. I have had no desire to get my needles into it and do that this weekend. But really, when you hear what's been going on this weekend, you'll understand why. I suspect that will become my nighttime knitting, while the socks are my train knitting. We shall see. And then when I finish this sweater, I hope to move on to that slip-over vest with the Malabrigo Rios Water Green. Haven't worked on anything else right now. Pretty soon I got to get back to the September sweater. That's just too easy not to finish. In Dizzy Blondes, I plied 2 plies of the Black Bowie Shadow, which is a blue-faced Leicester from Lisa Souza, with that beautiful cashmere she gifted me. I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, she now is out of the base and is not able to reorder the base for the Black Bowie Shadow and for another color, and I can't remember which one it was that I'm working with. Oh, no, I asked her for a color to complement something else, and she can't get that base. And so I realized, okay, I'm not going to have enough of this to make a sweater. I'm grateful she did give me that cashmere in that colorway. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be a Sophie scarf. This is a really nice luxury ply, and it should make a pretty decent little scarflet. Of course, I'm still working on my Electric Eel 6.1, which you can see in that picture, a bit dusty on the bottom there, but there she is. And let's move ourselves on to a strategy, shall we? Okay, so I've been talking about the real nuts and bolts of therapy, like, at a core level, how does therapy help you and how does it not? And I thought perhaps it would be good to say, what are you supposed to bring to therapy? And one thing I would say that people seem to blow off all the time is you really have to pick the right therapist. And this is not easy to do in our world of insurance because, your health insurance may limit your choice of therapists, or you may go to a therapist and it may be hard to change based on your insurance. So it's not a small thing here in the States, getting that right therapist. But if you can, you should probably give a therapist 1-2 sessions and see if you feel like there's a vibe there. And it's very interesting when patients do that. I've certainly been dumped. I think it's a normal thing to recognize that as a therapist myself, I can't work with every patient. I'm not going to have every patient's style. And that seems to account for less than 50% of the success. In other words, a lot of people come to therapy and they're just unrealistic about what they can get in therapy, or they're not ready for therapy, they're not ready for change, or they're not ready to look at their pain. That's all okay. I don't mean to judge the patient there. You come to therapy when you're in a certain place, and if you have no experience with therapy, you're going to have some strange ideas about it. So it is really important that you get a therapist that you vibe with. And I've had patients fail for the first 3 sessions, where every session they're saying, this doesn't work, I don't like this, I'm not getting anything. And yet they like me. And they hang in because they'll say, but I really like you. I don't know why it's not working. And really it's just both parties kind of looking for that common strand that's going to connect us, that moment where we start to really, put it in quotes, get each other. Now that's not common. I've been doing this a long time. Usually I set up a pretty good vibe in my intake. I've got a lot of experience, but there are definitely still patients from time to time where I feel like, what is going wrong? I can't seem to connect here. And I know they're feeling it too. And so one thing I would tell you is, it's okay. We understand that happens. So if you're with a therapist and it's not working, you try to leave nicely. You just say, I don't feel like this is right. I'm really sorry. Or, you seem like a nice person, whatever. I have certainly seen a few therapists in my time with whom I knew I could not work. And it's important to realize they're perfectly good therapists, probably, but it's not the vibe I'm looking for. The other thing that you should bring to therapy is a sense of clarity of goals. What do you want from therapy? And most people say variations on, I just want to get all this stuff off my chest. And that's not an answer. And we all want to do that. Why would you come to therapy for that? What is the need in therapy? Do you not have friends? Do you not have somebody you can trust? Like, why are you bringing that to me? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I am really honestly curious why you need to do that. Most people just vent their stuff to a loved one, to a friend, whatever. And really, when you come to therapy, you are coming for change, no matter what therapy you go to. And one of the other problems we run into is people come to therapy wanting us to change someone else in their life. Kids are always saying, my parents are so unreasonable. You need to tell them, and that's the simplest version of it. And of course, I don't blame people. If you don't know what therapy is, if you haven't been to therapy, why would you know that that isn't realistic? And the reality is you have to change in therapy and you have to change. I can't change you. I'm a consultant at the very best. So I can say to you, well, here's what people with your problem typically do. Here's the kind of thing they do. Do you think you could do something like that? And a lot of times people will say, well, no, I don't want to change. I just want to get this off my chest. And that's a problem. That is more of a problem than you probably realize. Because, see, when people are unhappy, one of the ways they're making their unhappiness continue is they keep repeating to themselves all their reasons to be unhappy. And that will make them more depressed or more anxious. They're worrying more, or they're reminding themselves more why everything is sort of hopeless. The problem is that is countertherapeutic. Those habits make you worse. So why would you do them? It's a really important question. You do them because if you're healthy, and healthy enough not to need me at all, that is one of the ways we solve problems. So for example, if I'm upset about something, I go to my husband. He'll say, what's wrong? And I'll tell him. And just in the telling, I'll start to realize what my solution is. I'll start to think of possible answers. I'll start to reframe it in a more productive way. Okay, just by talking it out, if I'm healthy enough, I'll get an answer. So why do you need a therapist? Okay, the therapist is there because that very behavior didn't work. It wasn't enough. That you're leaning more towards a pathology now, or you're stuck in some kind of rut and your friends can't get you out of it. So it's one thing, when you come into therapy with me, I do the intake, and I apologize at the beginning of the intake. I say, I'm not really going to be listening to your whole story today. I have a lot of information I have to give to the insurance company so they will authorize this treatment. So I apologize because you're going to be telling me something that you think is so important, and I'm probably going to rudely interrupt you and ask you something really unrelated, like how far did you go in school? And I have to do that. Now, I have to get a complete history. That's what I'm looking at. Also, I can't say this for all my colleagues, but I am a forensic psychologist. So it's like being Sherlock Holmes. Everything a patient tells you in their history is a clue, is usually diagnostic in its value, that I'm tying it into this giant picture with all these odds and ends that connect in my head because I have the experience and the training to connect them. So the patient's having trouble connecting them, whereas to me, since I'm outside their head and I'm objective, I may see a bigger picture here, a bigger map of how it all connects. That is what you're paying me to do, okay? So in the intake, I'm going to hear the most significant stuff usually. Now people say, oh no, I'm in my 40s, I've got a very complicated life. That's true. But you would be amazed, because one of the things we listen for in the intake is the themes that the patient is following. And so, yeah, you'll have a lot more stories that I don't know after the intake. But I'm kind of going to know your themes. Themes, I'm really depressed because I feel unloved. I'm really depressed because I feel unable to reach out to other people. I'm really anxious because I went to a mental ward 10 years ago and I'm getting scared that I'll have to go back. Or I don't think my medication is working, or my health is failing, or whatever. So we are listening for that overall theme. What's the overall trend in the way this person is looking at the world? So if you just keep telling me the same story over and over, what are you doing? Nothing. You are just digging the hole deeper for yourself. Telling yourself this story over and over is what is scaring you, is what is bringing you down or making you anxious. So with me, the goal is I want to know the story, and I will listen to it a few times at various times in the treatment. Sure. I don't say, oh, shut up. No, you can't tell me that story. I would never do that. But the idea is, where do we go with that story? What does that story tell you about yourself? If you could change that story, what would you change it to? When you tell me that story, what do you think it has done to you that I can see or hear without knowing the story? How have you changed as a person because of this? How would you like to change that back? What would you look like if this story was not such a burden? So what am I really talking about here? I'm really talking about what is the patient's side of therapy and what makes it hard for them to feel like they're getting anywhere in therapy. And what I'm tracing it to, now there's a lot more of this than what I'm saying. But again, this is Scott Miller from UNLV. This is Bill Miller from University of Nevada, Reno, I think. And I'm forgetting one more person. But the point is, these guys are talking about this. How do we make that initial bond in therapy so that the work can happen? So what I'm saying is, it is important, if you're coming into therapy as a consumer, that you really have to determine, do you like the therapist? You know, at the end of every intake, I say to the patient, so what do you think? Do you want to work with me? Do you think we can do this? I really want the patient to tell me that. And most of the time, they're like, oh, yeah, because I sound pretty good. I've had a lot of practice. I should sound good after 30 years of trying. But I want them to hear themselves saying that to me as one of the last things that happens in the session. I want them to hear that they are buying in, that I am working with goodwill because they told me they want this. And every now and then a patient goes, well, I'm not sure because of X. It's really important. I really want to hear that. Please don't feel afraid to say that. Any good therapist should be ready for that. The other thing I'm asking a patient to do, and I'll get to it about halfway through the intake hour, is what goals do you have here? What would you like from me? Why do you think I'm able to help you? What do you think we could achieve here? And I will listen to them talk, and then I will say, well, let me tell you what that sounds like in my language. And I will recite what I think a good goal for them will be. And I will let them tinker with it a bit. And I'll say, we can change these at any time, but this is enough to get going on. And also, I make clear to the patient, and this is the third issue, that therapy is going to be about change. So I'm not going to let them just endlessly vomit the same stories over and over. And I do have patients who cannot succeed with me. I just had one recently. It's kind of rare, but it still happens, where this person kept saying, no, I need to examine all the tragedies of my past. And this is a person who's in their 80s. And the answer is memory is not that reliable. You don't really even know the tragedies of your past anymore that clearly. Wouldn't it be easier just to learn to let them go, to say, most of the people involved are dead and I can't get what I want from them? Wouldn't it be easier to control your own thinking and find your own paths to find happiness, to look for happiness and satisfaction? So every now and then I get somebody who's not going to work with me. Now, there are therapists who would say, no, that would be good. Let's explore his deeper psyche. Yes, Pax vobiscum. In other words, peace be with you. Good luck on that one. That is not what I do in therapy. There are other perfectly good clinicians who probably could do that. Meanwhile, I'm still having a blast with the Finch app because my bird went to Edinburgh, Scotland this week, and that's fulfilled all my hopes and dreams for the app. My app ID is in the show notes. If you would like to become a friend on Finch, you should feel free to do it. Meanwhile, remember the segment called Green Fingers? It's back. Yeah, now, last time we did Green Fingers, it was probably tedious because I was trying to think of something to say, which is why I finally just stopped doing the segment. But 2 years ago, you may remember, yes, we've been doing this that long, kids. 2 years ago, I was looking for plants that would be perennial, that would keep coming back every year, that could grow in our region. I had really dismal lack of success. However, few things have happened since then. And if you look at the pictures, you will see the first picture is under my kitchen window, all the weeds up against the house. Those have to go. It's against the law. And we're not supposed to have anything there, but that was where I had my huge bank of Paiute spearmint, the spearmint that the Paiute patient gave me many years ago. And I asked the boys to pull out, there were all these wooden canes last year, and it was kind of a mess, and I said, just pull those out. Well, I think we pulled up roots when we did that. So suddenly I don't have spearmint, and I have this wild weed bed like I have not had in years. Last year, this time, that was pretty solid spearmint with a few little weeds peeking through. So I felt really sad, and one day I was looking at that about 2 weeks ago and realized there was a teeny tiny spearmint right up against that wall. And I thought, well, I'll weed that out. So I thought, I hate weeding. I hate it with all my heart because I have to do it with my bare hands to really be able to feel the weeds and feel if I'm getting the root through my fingers. Can't do it through a gardening glove very well. And I couldn't find my girly gardening gloves. That matters to me. Okay. So I said, I'll do this for 5 minutes. Well, you can see what happened. In the second picture, I'm doing 5 minutes of weeding per day. And as I'm doing it very carefully to find any spearmint that are in there. And they are. And the really wild thing was after 2 days, the spearmint plants that I unearthed the first day, or I freed from the weeds, doubled in size. Because spearmint acts like a weed. And so I realized all I got to do is give these guys a fighting chance. Now today, which I think was my 5th day of this, 5th or 6th day, I began to notice that I'm not finding spearmint plants anymore. So I may have gotten to the end of where the surviving spearmint was able to regrow itself from its roots. But that's okay. I'm going to keep weeding my way down that. In the meantime, my other experiments, Russian sage was a success. I put in a very mature rosemary bush. That's been a success. And I'm thinking there was one more, and I can't remember what it was. One of the surprises was I put in agapanthus, and it did great that year, and it should have rooted, and it didn't. But definitely the Russian sage is doing really, really well. So hopefully that's where we're going. At the grocery store, I found that they had this beautiful plant that was flowering red, and it was a type of sage. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I'm probably going to get one of those guys too. I used my plant identifier app, but I can't remember the actual name of it. Mexican, I think it was Mexican sage, was one variation name. So we are back at Project Green Fingers. I really want to get the milkweed plants put in, and I want to try to get some pollinators going around here. If we can get a reasonable flow of pollinators around the house, that's going to help with anything I plant. And yes, it was really rewarding. Yesterday morning I went out early and was surrounded by bees in the wisteria in Audrey 4, which makes me extremely happy. The more pollinators we get, the better my plants will do from year to year. So welcome back, Spearmint and Green Fingers. The current thing is Project Spearmint, to get all those weeds out and see if we can restore the spearmint in that space. My husband also pulled out the jasmine that's been there for like 23 years because it's just going in every wrong direction. And we've got some rose bushes that probably can be pulled because they're just wood now with a few flowers. I'll miss them. The China rose, the wild rose, I'll miss them. And you can see, too, if you're really paying attention, in that second picture, the spearmint at the top, for those of you who are around and watching me do my broadcast during the quarantine, that's where Nathaniel the Hawthorne used to be. My husband finally was able to get the root out of there, and so the spearmint is merrily taking over the space. Shoot. I'm not running, but I've been hiking Los Angeles, as you probably noticed in all this train exploration in the last few weeks. And one of the things I found today was the books of Danny Jensen. And today I bought Secret LA because it's just oddball things you should find in LA. I've already found that when I was in Los Feliz last weekend, I missed the Shakespeare Bridge. Now that's heartrending. So instead of just always going to yarn stores and weighing myself down with more yarn, I know many of you are saying, what's wrong with that? You say it like it's a bad thing, Gemma, but still. I think I'm going to try to switch myself to sightseeing for the rare and unusual, as well as all the museums in Los Angeles. Danny Jensen has another book, and I think it's called LA Scavenger Hunt or Scavenger Hunt Los Angeles. I'll let you know. I definitely plan to try to pick that up next week at a Barnes & Noble. But today I bought Secret LA at Barnes & Noble. They do stock his stuff. He has a website. It was a little unreliable. He has some kind of blog. And it was asking me for my email address, and it just could not verify that I'm human. That's a first. But at any rate, I gave you the link, I think, to Abe's books, to that version. You can't buy it used at this point. It's a very new book. He's got 3 books. I think the third one is 100 Things to Do in LA Before You Die or something. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, these are really fun books. If you're visiting, I would say definitely pick up one of these and go treasure hunting for something to do while you're touring around the city. Meanwhile, you can see my upcoming races, and we are heading towards the Forever Brave 5K on May 25th, which I'm looking forward to. After that, they start coming thick and fast. Well, now I have a break between July and October, which I'm sure will get filled. Meanwhile, in the fluffy books, I decided to re-listen to The Unknown Ajax because I really liked it and I couldn't put my finger on why. Now I know why. This is one of her secure, very omniscient male heroes. But he's playing a role, and it's very charming, and so I enjoyed it. And she really has a habit now, I know. This author knows her classics, and she really has a habit of taking the names of characters very, very seriously. And so calling him the unknown Ajax, Ajax in classical mythology is a little bit stupid, but very, very strong and powerful. And she gives him the first name Hugh, but he goes by Hugo. Now, I'm thinking we've got a medieval knight there somewhere that I'm not identifying because Hugo is very shrewd, but he knows how to play a waiting game. He understands how to keep his mouth shut and to stand back and let everybody play out their crazy in front of him without involving himself. And I think that feels like my job description. So I have to say this is one of my favorite Heyer novels. I finished The Black Moth, and I think I talked about it a lot last episode. It's absolutely charming. I enjoyed every bit of it. And very curiously, the title character is more of the background. He's not the hero. But there is this very shrewd secondary plot. And it's very satisfying. Because when you see the hero and the heroine get together, you realize that it's all been about the nature of love. And the title character is incredibly selfish and a really unpleasant character. And that character comes back a lot in her later novels. In fact, in The Unknown Ajax, the nasty cousin Vincent is a version of it. And it's just very interesting because she does this very neat little trick where you think you're watching these two lead characters, and you are, fix everything and learn how to be with each other and solve their huge problems in life. And in the background, the book is talking about the nature of honor and selflessness and love. And at the very end, it sweeps around to the selfish title character, actually manifesting a lot of that same lesson. So the Black Moth is peculiarly satisfying, and it is one of her very, very clever tricks. It's up there with Masqueraders for this is a really original, interesting trick. And in Masqueraders, because I have trouble with the initial premise, believing it could actually work, I don't feel the trick is as successful in Masqueraders. Like her really cool trick there, how she maneuvers the male and female leads, the brother and sister. But Masqueraders is cool. I mean, I did finish it, and it really is an amazing book. And I'm really aware that I'm going to reread it, because when you're getting through it the first time, it launches a lot of surprises. One of the great characters of Hayer's creation is Tremaine of Barham. And he comes out of the background in the middle of the book, and you're thinking, okay, he had to show up. And he just takes over the stage. Now, I have to say, in The Black Moth, I really felt like the book was supposed to be about the title character, and instead her lovable lovers take over the book, that they really walk away with the book. I feel like this is a bit of a Mary Sue, but it wasn't intended to be. And then she pulls this very clever trick at the end to really bring the Black Moth character back into the fold. It's really quite a brilliant trick. So what could have been a really embarrassing Mary Sue turns into this very shrewd book. For a first book, it's mind-blowing. Masqueraders is more like this. It's like watching sleight of hand, that you realize as an author, she also is a masquerader. That she keeps continually telling you the book is about one thing, and it keeps moving to be about something else. And the reader of the version I had is so good. She's really superb. And the way she does Tremaine of Barham, I am Tremaine of Barham, is just wonderful. And you keep waiting. The way Tremaine of Barham presents himself, you keep thinking, wow, this guy's a narcissist. Well, look, I'm a therapist. I can't help myself. But at the same time, he really is brilliant. He's telling you the truth about himself. But he is pretty hard to take at times. And at the end, she has him throw a bit of a tantrum. Because you begin to realize, again, it's another masquerade. He believes he is the genius of the book, but he's not. The genius of the book, the male genius, is the guy who I'd call the second male lead, the guy who's going to marry the sister of the two brother and sister main characters. He's really the guy who steals the plot, quite literally. Tremaine accuses him of it. It's very, very funny. It's very metadramatic. It's really, really smart. So Masqueraders, I got to say, it kind of blows my mind, because once you've read it, she plays with a lot of her own tropes, like the omniscient male lead. And she jerks them around and she laughs at them. And she keeps switching things from hand to hand, as it were, in the plot. And when you read The Black Moth against it, you really see that she's able to do that from the very beginning of her career. And she's very self-conscious of this. Now, I am also reading one of her historical romances, Simon the Cold Heart. Yuck. Well, I'll tell you, it does something I really hate. And I say this with love, because J.R.R. Tolkien does this in the third book of the Rings trilogy. It uses this kind of pseudo-medieval high language, and lo, Simon came unto the field. And, I hate it when Tolkien does it, and I hate it when Heyer does it. Nonetheless, I am slowly getting sucked into Simon the Cold Heart. This is one of her older novels, I think. And she's really pouring her heart into this annoying style. And so I'm not looking for a show of genius here. He is an experiment in her omniscient male lead, I would say. And you can pretty much tell what the experiment is. This guy was born this way. Now, eventually he starts to point out that he wasn't. He had a hard childhood and it made him who he is. But that cold-heartedness is an interesting trait because all these male leads who are omniscient, and they're in a few of the books. The Convenient Marriage is one of them. Sprig Muslin, you could argue Sir Gareth is one of them. I really like, you can tell I really like that character. Okay, and the thing is, if you were that good, oh yes, These Old Shades has one. If you were really that good, if you were really that smart, would you really be likable? Would you really be able to like lesser beings? And again, Simon the Coldheart asks that question. Really, so does Masqueraders, if you believe that Tremaine of Barham is the protagonist. Certainly Tremaine of Barham thinks he's the protagonist in the story. I would disagree with him, but I wouldn't do it to his face. So there's a lot of interesting stuff about her stock male lead going on in all three of these, and I'm enjoying it. Something I really like, I got a baseball cap. It is a pale lavenderish pink, and it's got a Moomin on it. Which Moomin? Depends who you think. I choose to think it's Moomin Mama, but I don't see a purse. It's probably Moomin Troll. Could be Moomin Papa, but doesn't have a hat. Okay, but it has a Moomin on it. I went into the best Barnes & Noble I've ever been to, and this is at Glendale Galleria. It's right outside the Galleria in a separate but linked shopping plaza that I'll talk about in a minute. And they had a whole big Moomin display. There were Christmas tree ornaments. There were lapel pins. Oh, and there was only one hat, and I got it. Oh, I love it so much. It's the perfect hat for me. It goes with everything I own. It's my favorite colors. And you can see in the pictures there's a picture of me leaning forward to show you the Moomin cap. But also, I got new reading glasses that I love. They're exactly what I was looking for. They're called Peepers. And they had a big rack of those. And so I went wandering through that because one of my goals was to get a second pair of old lady glasses. So there they are. You can't see the colors. They're wonderful. They're dark blue. And then they have some tortoiseshell brown kind of wrapped into the lower parts of the frame. Just interesting looking things. Meanwhile, yes, the month of April is the month where I have the original series of Cognitive episodes 1 through 50 in zip files on my Proton drive. And you can download them if you want them. It's okay if you don't. They're going to be taken down. And in May, I will put up episodes 51 to 100. And let's move on to the blather, shall we? Well, so on Saturday, I decided to do a longer trip. And I decided to make a dream come true and go down to the Knitting Tree LA. I say this because the Knitting Tree LA is really well known for being original, interesting, inclusive, friendly, welcoming, and very thorough. And I'd always wanted to get there, but it's a long haul to near the airport. If I go to the airport, it's still a little over a mile away. So it would be a bit of a hike, and there's not a real direct bus from the airport, which is interesting in itself. So I had to really do some transit, and I learned some important lessons. I took the train down to LA Union Station, the Metrolink rail, and then I took 3 different subways. So it was a lot of riding. Not as much walking as I would have liked. So you can see the last train station there at Manchester on the K line. And that was another thing I learned. I didn't even know the K line existed. I remember they were building it. And the K line is an attempt to connect the western area, the far western areas of Los Angeles, but not out at the coast because the rich people aren't going to allow that. But it's this attempt to connect that area to LA Union Station and to the airport. Right now, you go to LA Union, you pick up a bus to get to the airport, the flyaway. And it's not that convenient, and there's not that much space on it. So this line ends right where that station is where I got off. But the next station is being built, and it is for LAX. The problem is, if you look at a map, it doesn't look very close to LAX, that is Los Angeles Airport. I'm assuming that they will fix that. I am assuming that there is a plan to put a tram in or something. It would be enormously great to have a subway stop by the airport. Now, I grew up in Philadelphia where It took 3 wise men and a star to get to the Philadelphia International Airport from anywhere. And they finally built a train line to it when I was about 30. And the difference is astonishing to be able to get on a train to the airport. So I am really looking forward to this. You can also see one of the transition points between lines there in the second picture. That is between the E line and the K line. And it's just nice. You had to walk out of the E station, cross the street, go down underground, and there you are. But it works very well. All of this you can do with just one pass, your tickets for the railroad. So I finally made it after well over 2 hours of traveling. And there's the front of it. There's a picture of the front of the knitting tree. It doesn't look like much, but when you get into it, it is hands down one of the finest knitting shops I've ever seen. It is superb. It is fairly large, incredibly well stocked, and they have everything you want. Well, almost. They don't have a lot of spinning fiber. In fact, they actually had felting packs, but I respect that they're trying to have felting supplies as well. They had wheels. They were selling wheels. I did not take a good long look at what type of wheel they were selling, so I have nothing to say there. But they're trying to be spinning friendly. They're trying to be knitting friendly, of course, crochet friendly, felting friendly, and weaving. There were simple looms there. So I was deeply impressed with that. What really blew me out of the water, well, they're really friendly. I mean, from the minute I walked in the door, they were not falling all over me, annoying me as I shopped, but they continually expressed welcome. They continually are like, hey, and if you find something you like, just let us know. And, if you want, you can come and knit with us. And, oh, do you want to look at that? Do you want me to help you look at that? They were just really good without being intrusive. It was so accepting. It was an incredibly good environment. I don't know where they're getting their knitters from. The housing region around the airport, I wouldn't think is particularly rife with knitters. It's a fairly warm area of the city. But, boy, they had a lot of people in there, and it was so welcoming. They have potlucks on Wednesday nights and on Sunday afternoons. I believe they're open, I don't know if they're open on Mondays, but they're certainly open on Sundays. And you can see some of the classes there, beginning knitting, beginning crochet, a social knit and crochet. They were amazing. I said, are you okay with me mentioning you on the podcast? They didn't ask what podcast. They didn't need me as much as I needed them. But I was impressed. I want to give special kudos to Annette, who was one of the 2 staff members who was there that day, and she was just so kind. As you can see, they had a wall of Malabrigo Rios. If that isn't going to make me love you, nothing will. They had tons of needle. Look at all those chowgoos. They had crochet hooks. They had notions. Anything you wanted, they pretty much had it. They had a walking wheel in the window that may have been a spinning wheel shaped object. In other words, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I'm looking at its mother of all, and there's no spindle on it. But then again, in that setting, I might not put the spindle on it because it could be a little pointed and dangerous. You can see they've got a loom sitting there in the front. Boy, have they got everything. There's their woobles and other crochet kits for beginners, including a dragon that I may have to go back for. There is a big wall of everything. There's more, just anything you could want, embroidery hoops, silks, cotton. They were really, really trying to get into every aspect of fiber they could get into that shop. Yet the shop is very neatly organized. It doesn't feel constricted. Feels very spacious and wonderful. And then there were the emotional support chickens. Now, you may remember the late, great Bev Galakis. She who wrote the book, literally, on how to use circular needles to knit in the round. She's the one who taught us Magic Loop. At least she's the one who taught me. I had her pamphlet on it. And Bev Galakis did a lot of wonderful things, and I hope I'm getting her name right. One of them was the emotional support chicken. Now, she didn't call it that. She called it, I think, Henrietta and her brood, and did a couple different sizes. I have to go research more of it. But the knitting tree took the big chicken, and they altered it slightly to make it a little bit more their own, and they sell it as a pattern. And I believe Franklin Habit got into this too, was knitting emotional support chickens. I'm assuming he used Bev G's model. At any rate, the Knitting Tree got into this, and then they started doing theme chickens. And there they are. There's the gallery of the theme chickens, and then they extended it to a crocheted chicken. Now, you may remember I did an emotional support hen from a pattern I found on Ravelry that I just love, Bella, and she is not similar in appearance to their crocheted emotional support chicken. So somewhere down the road I got to get that pattern. But I bought one of the knitted ones because I wanted to try one of those anyway. I got, hope you're sitting down, Tail Feather Swift. And that's the kind of painful pun you have to brace yourself for. She even has a little necklace with her name on it. They're really good. And the other one I was drawn to was Barack Obama. I cannot tell you, the names were half the fun. You just have to go. They've got this enormous collection of them sitting there. You can see them all, or most of them. If you look, you'll see a neon green one towards the end. That's Elphaba. I can't remember what the pun on her name is. But they had an Elphaba and a Glinda, and they're sitting there. You can see the Glinda. She's kind of faint. She looks whitish pink, which is pretty much what she is. These are brilliant. And I saw them on the website and was trying to figure out the Elphaba one. The beak looks flat in her face because it's hard to see in that photo in 3D. It is not. It is a beak like everybody else. Just the photo is not the best angle for it if you see it on the website. Anyway, you go in there and they have kits. And you can see the picture of my kit there. And it's got the traditional chicken we've all seen, I think from Franklin Habit. But you can pick which bird you want. And if they don't already have it there as a kit, they will make it up for you. It is so funny. I think the kit was about $40. I feel like it was well spent. It does not have needles. It does not have stuffing. Well, that's okay. I got a million of all of that. I'm fine. But it has the safety eyes. It has the complementary yarns. It has their directions. And it has a digital download that they take your email and they give you the paper pattern in the kit. But also I was delighted to find it was in my email when I got home. Then they have a crochet version. I almost bought the Tail Feather Swift in crochet. I may go back for her because she has glitter around her neck. And then they also have a little mini crochet version which they want you to use, I think, worsted weight yarn and a 4.5 hook, which is between a G and an H. If you're American, it's a number 7 hook, if you've heard of that. Okay, I don't have that I know of. I need to go looking. However, I did download the pattern for something nominal. I think it's like $3.50 or something. And I'm looking at it because I think it would make a heck of a good keychain if you work it on a D as in dog or F hook. Little tiny hooks, like 2.5 millimeters or something. I want to go try that because I think this is a great scrap yarn eater. And I want to try it in sock yarn, which just goes to show I don't really need my eyes. I'm old anyway. But I have to tell you, if you go to the Knitting Tree LA, for nothing else, go to see the chickens. That chicken display is so wonderful. And I just could not get over how friendly and welcoming everybody was. Now, I do not mean to diss the other shops I've talked about, but the real strength of the Knitting Tree is that they have really perfected inclusivity and warmth. And I have never quite seen anything like it. If I ever make it to Webb's, I really want to go to Webb's in Massachusetts because I believe they do that too. Just the things I've heard people say about going to Webb's. But just awesome. Just awesome. To my shock, one of my friends who's a librarian on Reddit, she's a librarian in Iowa, she said, I love the Knitting Tree LA. I have to go back and say, did you actually go there? Because she clearly seems to know about it. So there is my emotional support chicken. I am not starting her yet. Meanwhile, Bella, my crocheted one, she's in the back of the car because I thought she might have a moth on her. So I'm going to just bake her in the car. You may remember that I took Gigi Knitmore's advice and I baked one of my sweaters made from all my hand-spun yarn, including all my animals. And I was afraid it had gotten mothed. So it didn't, as far as I can tell. But I baked that in the back of the Prius in autumn weather. And it worked. Absolutely. Not a moth on that puppy. Meanwhile, So I made my way home yesterday, and I arrived home exhausted because I couldn't get any food, because there was a brew house right next to it that I could have gone to, Three Weavers, which I think they're getting their name from, their neighbor, the Knitting Tree. I hope so. But at any rate, I could have gone there. And I chose not to, which I really regret, because I got all the way back to LA Union, and then they canceled my train. If I had known that, I could have walked right over to Oliveras Street, perfectly good restaurants there, or Chinatown, or Little Tokyo. No, I ate a horrible pile of greenery from one of the fast food places, actually from a convenience store, but it's a very good one, Trumana, that's in Union Station. I did fight off the urge to drink caffeine at Starbucks. Instead, I just had a nice water from Trumana, and I therefore could barely keep my eyes open last night, which was good. Okay, so today I said, it's time to go back to Glendale, and instead of going back to a shop, particularly, it's very tempting to go back to Little Knittery, because they're also a really good shop. But instead of doing that, I decided just to go north by bus to the Glendale Galleria. I'm so glad I did. You can see I got to the bus stop at Central in Colorado, and the Galleria, big shopping mall, pretty traditional mall, but huge, is on my left. And on my right, there's this other sort of development, something gallery or something, that's related to it. Has all these very expensive hotels, expensive car dealerships like Mercedes-Benz, Tesla. On the far eastern side of it, I came in on the western side of that development. I walked in because I knew there was a cheesecake factory and a Barnes & Noble. So you can see my ceviche partly devoured. It is shrimp and raw tuna ceviche. And it was incredibly good and incredibly keto, because you can see there are chips in the back. I just pulled them out, fried tortilla, got rid of them, and I ate that insanely wonderful ceviche. And believe me, that was a fine lunch. And I had their low-carb cheesecake again, because they don't add sugar, which means sugar's in the crust, but it shouldn't be in the cheesecake itself, as far as I can tell. And I make cheesecakes that way that work. At any rate, I had that. We'll see what my A1C looks like, when I get to the doctor next month. But it was really quite delightful. Then I walked into the best Barnes & Noble I've ever been to, 3 stories. It was insanely wonderful, and that is where I found, among several things, I found that wonderful Moomin Cap and the book by Danny Jensen about odd things in LA. So this was really super. I was there for a few hours, picked up the one bus right in front of the place, rode it right up to the train, got on the train. That was really, really nice. In other news, of course, my son continues as the chorus line guy in The Music Man. We are still continuing our boycotts due to Lent. Interestingly enough, I went into the Target in the Galleria because they had a Starbucks in the Target. So I ascertained the people working in the Starbucks are real Starbucks. So I said, okay, so Starbucks is just franchised in there. I don't think I'm benefiting Target. But I went in the Starbucks because I needed coffee because I wasn't going to make it home. Alert. And the line in front of the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf was too much. So I went in there and I got a nice iced coffee and I sat down with it. And it was very pleasant. And then I had a good look at Target and I was really pleased to see it was very empty, to be honest. There were very few customers. And frankly, well, what do you want me to tell you? Not exactly people of color. So good. Because Target's taken a huge hit on discontinuing DEI, as they should, and I'm not going to buy from Target. I'm just not. I have not lived my whole life to start playing the game of, oh, well, okay, I'm white, so when you say DEI, you don't really mean me. You mean all those people of color. No, I was a DEI hire all my life. And you can't be this stupid if you're a white girl. You have to realize, no, they don't like you any more than they ever did. But we're playing this game about skin color now and about less traditional gender identification. I'm trying to think of a good way to say that. So suddenly I'm one of the winners? I don't believe that. Particularly since now they're trying to take my vote away. They're trying to say I have to have all this stuff to vote and I can't have changed my last name to my husband's last name, which fortunately I didn't, guys. Ha ha. Okay, but that is really driving me nuts. So I ain't shopping at Target. That's the short end of it. I'm not buying into this. This is phony identification of me as a white woman as not being DEI. That's laughable. It's not about the skin color. It's about not being white male, as far as I'm concerned. And nothing against my white males who I live with and love, but they don't have problems getting a job. I always have. So don't fall for it, guys. Not going to Target. I am not going to give my money to people who do not hire people who look like me. Okay, in the meantime, you can see all the usual stuff. I'm still on Blue Sky, and you can see the community resources, the calendar of upcoming stuff. Somewhere in my race list, you will see that I have the week of July 4th off, which is nice. I'll be running a race that weekend, the red, white, and blue. And, of course, CFR. And finally, Minerva will get the last word here. Minerva would like you to cherish your friends. You can see she's lying there in the nighttime big bedroom. Try to ignore that little bit of dog and cat hair on the floor. Pardon me. Try to ignore the mending pile. I'm pointing out all the stuff that is really wrong with that picture that I shouldn't. But she is lying there on the bed, and she is warming it for me, of course. She has no intention of staying on the bed. Oh boy, that's such a lie. And meanwhile, on the floor is her buddy, Captain. Captain, she is passed out on her side. Every night, Captain comes in and sleeps in the big bedroom because she wants to get close to the back door. She's hoping we'll let her out so she can go outside and bark all night. But also it's a little more cool outside. We don't let her outside because we really don't hate our neighbors, okay? So there they are, sharing the bedroom, ignoring each other. But again, they're very attached to each other. It is very funny when they walk into the room, if the other one is there, they will greet each other. They're very friendly. Minerva makes clear that she does not like Captain being in the bedroom. She would be much happier if I would throw Captain out of the bedroom at night. But I feel for Captain because I think she overheats easily because she is 3/4 Newf. But Minerva, despite this is how cats and dogs get along. They often act like they don't see each other, they don't know each other, and yet they're very loyal to each other. And yes, my heart goes back to the pictures of baby Minerva lying on Newfoundland Baron's forelegs while Baron looked helpless, and lying tucked up against German Shepherd blankets while blankets looked horrified and repelled. That is how cats and dogs react to each other quite often, but they are still friends. They all still look for each other. I think one of the best examples of that, when we first moved here, there was a fire, big one, and the idiot on the property behind us started it. It was right on the edge of our property. Firemen were using our property as a base station. The wind took it the other way. We are very, very fortunate. But what I will never forget is we got the cats into carriers. And I began to realize they went into the carriers, no problem. But we put them out in the truck and they screamed and screamed. And I thought, well, they don't want to be, this was when I had a pickup truck. They don't want to be in the truck. No. When we put the dogs in the truck, the cats got quiet. They wanted their dogs. And yet they had this same kind of relationship that you can see in that photo. So Minerva's last word would be, even if you pretend you don't love them, cherish your pals. We get through this world because of our relationships with other. We are a community, and when we take care of the community, we are taking care of our own individual rights. In the meantime, everybody, take care of yourself, get all your vaccines, do all the things you need to do, and most of all, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.